That's right. It's the Cold War breakdown, baby. Well, you can see I'm losing my damn mind. Hopefully, you guys are not getting stir crazy. This is the last planned lecture. Hopefully, we'll be coming back. If not, we'll continue with this remote learning. But basically, today is going to be a breakdown. That's one other thing I've learned that I say basically a lot because I was editing these, so I'll try to not say that. Anyway, we're going to break down the Cold War, what's most heavily tested, and what we're going to do today is really I'm going to model how you should be studying for this unit and how you should be studying for all the other units. We're getting close to the AP exam, so I'm going to just model the protocol for how you should be studying. So Cold War breakdown, 1947 and 1991. You should always have a quick definition of what the Cold War is. In this case, right, it's an ideological war between the Soviets, communism, and the Americans, capitalism. What we should always be doing is breaking down the system that we want. So I really want you to focus in here because this is how I want you to be studying today. You're going to be having an SAQ today on this information. I highly recommend you study and then do it off of the dome. Okay, there's no utility in sitting down and writing down what was in the notes. So today you'll have an SAQ due, and over this weekend you're going to have a DBQ due on my AP where you're just going to type in. It's going to be under the same time constraints. I picked a pretty easy one that focuses on the stuff that we've talked about. So I really want you to be focusing on that rubric, those points for the rubric, and figuring that out. Once again, for the SAQ and the DBQ, please don't use your notes. Just do it off of your. There's no reason. Okay, there's no reason. I'm going to grade it very easily. Just please use your brain and not your books. So here's how you should be studying. Step one, you review the lecture notes for the week. Okay, so you're going to be going over the lecture notes from the week, highlighting, summarizing, going through, clarifying anything that you don't understand. Look it up. Google the term plus APWH. That's step one. Just read over your lecture notes, add little summaries, break it down, highlight it. Anything you're unclear of, check it out. Step two is to look through the ultimate review questions and answers, the Heimler guide, right, for Unit 8. And that basically breaks down, I said it again, damn it. That basically, sorry guys, that breaks down the objective packet into more consumable bites, different questions that break down the main idea of the objectives. So with your lecture notes, you're going to go through, practice these questions. You're going to ask yourself these questions, covering up this other side to see if you can answer the questions. With this and this in tow, then you head to the objectives. And here you're going to write down the answer to these objectives. Please read these key concepts. Okay, know them. They help answer the objective for sure, but the verbiage, the words that they use are very similar to what we'll see in the multiple choice questions. So this is our three-step process, lecture notes, the Heimler questions, and then it all ends with this objective package. If someone says this objective to you, you could talk about it, you could answer it. Proper nouns are always key. Be able to define them, be able to apply them. The goal for all of this is that aha moment, right? Where you go through and you're like, I got it. I got the Cold War in and out. And these three steps are the easiest ways that I've come across to make that happen. Okay? We want that aha. We want to be Bert, who just figured, I don't know what Bert's thinking, but let's move on. So I'm going to model how this would look. I'm skipping, of course, the lecture notes. We've already done those. So in front of you, you should have your lecture notes when you're studying, your ultimate review, and your objective packets. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay? So here we go. We always want to start with context. Okay? That is a point on the SAQ. That is a point on the LEQ. right here is from the College Board. So context describes a broader historical context relevant to the prompt. It always has to be relevant to the prompt. I don't want to see, the agricultural revolution and make some argument how this connects to, Cold War. No. To earn this point, the response must relate to the topic of the prompt or broader historical events, developments, or processes that occur before, during, or continue after the time frame of the question. Not awarded for merely a phrase or a reference. I want 4 sentences in that first paragraph. I want 4 sentences that basically lead up to whatever the prompt is about. So I want you to take a second, I want you to pause, and I want you to give me context for the Cold War. Imagine the prompt is evaluate to the extent to which the Cold War changed economies globally, something along that line. Just take a pause real quick and write down a context. Paragraph. Okay, hopefully you did that. I'm going to show you mine. You're going to see it's a little messy. There's some things that I could definitely improve on, but I did it before, and here's what I came up with. Okay, so after World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union, who allied during the war to defeat Germany, and Japan emerged as the world's superpowers. So you can see that's an awkward sentence, but where I'm getting there, who allied during the war to defeat Germany and Japan, emerged as the world superpowers. Russia had become a communist nation during World War I under Lenin and the Bolsheviks. I'm showing that I know the communists happened. I'm showing when. I'm showing who. The United States remained a capitalist democracy, even though the economic depression, which affected national economies internationally. Under FDR, the New Deal sought to create programs to spend America out of, see, I even spelled that wrong, out of the depression using deficit spending and stabilize the economy. When World War II ended, the Cold War began, which was an ideological war between the capitalism of the United States and the communism of the Soviet Union. Both sought to spread their ideologies worldwide. Okay? This would definitely get the context point. I'm connecting those two things. I'm showing I know what's happening, what led to this, that one's a communist country, why they're communist, that one's capitalist. It doesn't have to be as good as this, but we want to head towards showing understanding in the context. Okay? If you want me to see your context, send it to me and I'll let you know if you got the point or not. All right, so let's get into how I expect you to study. So, step 1, this is, sorry guys. This is straight from the objective packet. Unit 8, Learning Objective A, explain the historical context of the Cold War after 1945. Okay? What we see here is what is the key concepts in that objective. Hopes for greater self-government were largely unfulfilled following World War I. Why? All of the colonies were, not all, most of the colonies were promised independence after World War I. If you fight in this war, we will grant you independence. Were they granted independence? No. However, in the years following World War II, increasing anti-imperialist sentiment contributed to the dissolution of empires and the restructuring of states. After World War II, we do see these independence movements. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. So this week is Cold War. Next week's going to all be about nationalism and decolonization. It's important to know that these two things happen at the same time. So this whole week we've been talking about Cold War. Next week we'll be talking about decolonization, but they're happening at the same time and they're connected. Okay. Technological and economic gains experienced during World War II by the victorious nations shifted the global balance of power. And we see over here to the side, atomic bomb, nuclear weapons are a huge part of this. The United States and the Soviet Union may emerge as these new technologically advanced powers with these bombs that can, level cities in seconds. So now we shift to Heimler. I took 3 of the questions that were in the Heimler that connected to that objective. What is a Cold War? What was the Cold War fought over? How did the Cold War begin? Okay, broke down those answers. Cold War is a war in which the belligerents don't fight in direct armed battle. There is no direct fighting between the Soviets and the Americans. Okay, we have the Americans and the Soviets, 2 global superpowers. It's an ideological war. It's capitalism versus communism. It lasted from 47 to 91. After World War II, Soviets wanted Eastern Europe under their control. This is how it began. And this made the United States nervous communism would spread. Okay? Once you have these down, you should be quizzing yourself, right? You should go back here. Explain the historical context of the Cold War after 1945 and be able to answer it. Proper nouns. Explain all of it. Okay? Let's move forward again. Learning objective B, explain the causes and effects of the ideological struggle of the Cold War. Okay, so we see here, this is your key concepts that are in the objective. Global balance of economic and political power shifted during and after World War II. Before World War II, Europe, Western Europe, Britain, they were global powers. After, it's basically two. It's the United States and the Soviet Union. The democracy of the United States and the authoritarian communist Soviet Union merged as superpowers, which led to ideological conflict and a power struggle between capitalism and communism across the globe. Groups and individuals, including the non-aligned movement. Remember the non-aligned movement. So the world's basically going to break up into three groups. Okay, NATO, America, and its allies. The Warsaw Pact, the Soviet Union and its allies, and then the non-aligned movement. The non-aligned movement is people who don't want to join. These are countries usually that just got independence, like India. Like, there's no way I'm signing a piece of paper to connect me to any of y'all. We just got independence. Okay. 2-minute drill. All right, so pretend we're in class. You'd be getting up. You'd be lying against the wall right now with your head down like, oh, this sucks. Why do we play this? I don't care. So here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes. I'm going to give you definitions. You're going to try to tell me what you think the word is and yell it out. Okay? If you want to pause it real quick because I'm going to say the answer right afterwards, please do. Just yell it out. Even if it's right or wrong, yell it out. Okay? Let's set this baby. Okay, 2-minute drill. Here we go. Starting now. This is the hold on. What do we got? This is the policy that Neville Chamberlain used to give Hitler land to prevent war. Appeasement. This is the agreement that allowed during World War I Russia to give land to Germany to get out of World War I. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. This is the segregation that existed in South Africa. Apartheid. This is the document that ended World War I. Many historians believe it was too punitive. The Treaty of Versailles. Name 3 things that the Treaty of Versailles did to Germany. $33 billion in reparations. War guilt clause. Took away all of their colonies. This is the Vietnamese national who fought for independence from the French and fought to make Vietnam into a communist nation. Ho Chi Minh. This is This is the leader of Russia that introduced glasnost and perestroika and helped end the Cold War. Mikhail Gorbachev. This is the ideology created by Mussolini and embraced by Hitler that is hyper-nationalistic, violent, you're allowed to have private property, and usually blames another group. Fascism. This is There it is. We're done with the 2-minute drill. Hopefully that was somewhat helpful. I don't know. Moving on. So, objective Unit 8, learning objective C, compare the ways in which the United States and the Soviet Union sought to maintain influence over the course of the Cold War. There's all different types of ways. We talked about it. Propaganda, military alliances, proxy wars, nuclear proliferation. Nuclear proliferation is what? An arms race. It's a fancy way of saying an arms race. On one end, you're going to have the Russians make 20 bombs, we'll make 30. At one point, they're going to have more bombs to blow up the world more than once. Proxy wars. We really need to be familiar with these proxy wars. So that's what we're going to talk about right here. So, what formal alliances were created because of the Cold War? NATO and Warsaw Pact. Warsaw Pact, these are military alliances. If one place gets invaded, everyone else comes to their aid. Warsaw Pact, 1955, the Soviets and their people. NATO, 1949, the Americans and their people, and then non-aligned. India, Ireland, Egypt, Yugoslavia, anywhere here that is white is non-aligned. They want to stay out of it. Okay? What is a proxy war? Okay? The Americans and the Soviets don't directly fight each other, but they use stand-ins. So let's talk about options here. So the three big ones are going to be Vietnam, Korea, and Afghanistan. Let's talk about them briefly. Vietnam, we have Ho Chi Minh, who was fighting for independence from France. Remember, they were Indochina. It was a French colony. They were able to break away and have independence. The French realized there's no way we can win this war. They leave. Of course, who steps in? The United States. Why? Because they were spreading communism. Okay? Remember that policy, the domino theory. If one place becomes communist, then the places around it are more likely to become communist. The idea of containment, which is the Truman Doctrine. America wants to stop the spread of communism. That's why we go to Vietnam. That's why we go to Korea. So Ho Chi Minh spreads communism in North Vietnam, which is close to China. The United States fought with South Vietnam to stop communism against North Vietnam, and we lost. In 1975, withdrew. Vietnam becomes a communist nation. Korea, very similar to Vietnam. Communism was spreading from the north, was coming down from China in the north into South Korea. After a war, the country was split at the 38th latitude parallel in 1953. We have this line. North of that line is communist, south is capitalist. And that's the way it is today. If you look at North Korea, they're a communist authoritarian government. South is a capitalist democracy. And then Afghanistan, this is switched. Afghanistan is the Soviets trying to conquer Afghanistan and make it into a communist state. Early on, they're successful because they have these helicopters that they're able to bomb these areas. Now, within Afghanistan, we have people who want to become communists, and we have these rebel fighters called the Mujahideen. Mujahideen are these rebel fighters fighting against communism. Who is America going to help? Of course, these rebel fighters, the Mujahideen. And we give them something called the Stinger, and the Stinger is basically a missile, heat-seeking missile that helps destroy the helicopters. And in the process, we inadvertently train Osama bin Laden, who will be the architect of 9/11. So these are examples of proxy wars. Never was America fighting directly with Soviets, right? During Afghanistan, the Soviets were fighting Afghans. We were providing weapons. During Vietnam, America was fighting the North Vietnamese. The Soviets were giving them weapons, okay? Proxy wars. All about spreading these ideas. Capitalism, communism. Objective J, explain the causes of the end of the Cold War. Okay? Advances in the military and technological development, the Soviet Union's costly and ultimately failed invasion of Afghanistan, it cost the Soviet Union a lot, and public discontent and economic weakness in communist countries. One of the main reasons that the Cold War ended was the capitalist economy was stronger because we make consumer goods. We make a bunch of crap, and then that money goes right back into the economy. That was not happening in these communist countries. Right? Communist countries were about everyone having a place to live, enough food to survive. Consumer goods just didn't exist. And remember Mikhail Gorbachev introducing glasnost and perestroika. Glasnost is openness. It's being able to criticize the government. Gorbachev was trying to kind of step away from this Stalinistic authoritarian leadership. And once people were able to criticize the government, they did. And perestroika was slowly introducing free market, private property into the economy. Gorbachev is, a huge part of ending the Cold War in a way that didn't result in, a mass civil war. And of course, the symbol that illustrates the end of the Cold War is the Berlin Wall coming down. So once again, I want you to see that's how you should be studying, guys, right? Lecture notes, timeline questions, objective packet, all three working together. So, Unit 8, Learning Objective D, explain the causes and consequences of China's adoption of communism. What I did for this one is I just created a little timeline. So just break this down. We have coming into this time period we have the Qing Dynasty, right? The Manchus who've taken over. Horrible time period for China. This is when opium is introduced. They fight the Opium Wars. They lose because they're not industrialized. We have the self-strengthening movement, which is a failure. We have the Taiping Rebellion, which is a large-scale civil war. We have the Boxer Rebellion. I mean, it's a mess. Then through this, we have Sun Yat-sen, who fights. He gets the army on his side, and he makes China a republic in 1912, okay? Ending that dynastic cycle that has happened for so long. So the republic from 1912 to 1949. Okay? Sun Yat-sen dies. Chiang Kai-shek takes control. It still remains a republic from 1912 to 1949. He makes a mistake, though, and he kicks the communists out of the Kuomintang, which is basically their government system, their political government system. Okay? When he kicks them out, he starts going after them. He starts going after the communists, and Mao Zedong, the leader of the communists, goes on this long march to escape Chiang Kai-shek. Okay? What's important about this long march is as he is fleeing from the nationalists, he and his followers are spreading communism to peasants on this long march. As they're being chased, they're spreading these ideas of communism to these peasants and basically collecting followers along the way. Okay? The fighting between them is going to stop during World War II. So the nationalists and the communists are fighting. World War II unfolds, and they will fight against the Japanese. Okay? But as soon as World War II ends, you guessed it, they're going to be fighting with each other once again. Okay? So after World War II, they're going to fight, and China becomes a communist nation in 1949 under Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong is going to copy initially the 5-year programs of Stalin, and they're somewhat successful. He introduces something called the Great Leap Forward, which is a mess. He has people trying to create their own steel, basically decentralizing production, and it is a mess, and millions die. After him, we have Deng Xiaoping, right? Yuan Mingqing Republic, Mao Zedong, Deng. Deng Xiaoping blends communism politically with capitalism economically. He's known as the father of modern China. If we look at China today, they have a communistic power over the government, right? If you speak out, you're arrested. They've suspended Google. Like, there is a communistic political power, but they've blended their economy to be capitalistic. And they provide goods, consumer goods, at a very cheap price that makes their economy work. That's Deng Xiaoping. He blends communism and capitalism. Okay, that's the end. What I want you guys to do is stay focused. I'll keep you posted on anything that's happening. Hopefully soon enough we'll be back here in the classroom. But if not, I'll keep on, producing these lectures and coming up with a game plan. Please let me know, guys, if something's working with these lectures, if you think something's not working, if I could improve upon something, reach out, send me a text, send me an email. I'd be happy to change things if you think they're more effective. Remember, this is new for me too. But reach out with questions, stay focused, keep your eye on the prize. In terms of the AP exam, it's not going to be canceled, definitely. It's definitely not going to be canceled. There is a potential that you may not be taking it at LATO. I'll keep you posted on that, but we're definitely going to be having these AP exams. That's why I'm putting in so much time and effort into these. I hope you're doing the same. Reach out if you need anything.